technical engineer and instructor at Terrapin Technology. And with me today is our lovely Betty Nelson.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar Wednesday. We're so excited. We have a special guest today, Torres of Datto. And if you're a client of Terrapin's, you know how much we believe in Datto and how it can protect you from really bad things happening and losing data.
Absolutely right. Eric, who is joining with us today, is going to be answering questions and taking us through a wonderful presentation he's prepared. And Eric's been in the technology industry for about 15 plus years, shares a passion for educating business communities, and obviously an ever-changing landscape of cybersecurity. That's pretty obvious, and how things are going now. Formerly a member of Datto's advisory board, and now the director of channel development, Eric is going to very welcomely share his knowledge and insight on things today. That's gone along with his working with threats at hundreds of peer-to-peer presentations before. He's talked about industry events that he's done and prepared and presented. And a little known fact, you were named CRN Magazine's 100 people you don't know but should.
I once was. That is correct.
That's a random fact. I like that. So now I can check that off my bucket list now. I appreciate that.
Well, because we've met him, so we're good.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then also, this was interesting too, that you were once a former member of the CompTIA's Security Executive Council. Mm-hmm. So yes. A lot of expertise in business continuity, managed service providing to the community, especially as Terrapin, we use a lot of your services and well so, focusing on growing businesses and securely.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So why don't we go ahead and get started? Let's, Eric, why don't you kind of take us into what do you want to share with us today?
Sure, absolutely. I'll give a brief overview of Datto. We're turning off our cameras so we don't confuse everybody. But yes, I'm Eric. Thank you for having me. Thank you for spending a half hour out of your morning with us. I've got some great technology that we'll be talking about and helping you through and navigate through some of the risks that are out there and how Terrapin and Datto can help.
Awesome.
There we go. Now we'll turn off our handsomely good looks.
There we go. All right.
So concentrate on it.
As far as Datto, a lot of people haven't heard of Datto, and that's by design because we only sell through the experts in your local area. Terrapin being one of them. We are the world's leading provider of business continuity solutions, and we're going to talk about those solutions today, but just in the sense of protecting all data, no matter where it lives. We are a global entity with offices all over and data centers all over, but rest assured, all of your data that is protected by Terrapin and Datto lives right here in the US and does not leave US borders. So moving on, let's talk about the topic of the day.
Yeah, and things have really changed, even from just a few months ago, obviously from the past year. And many of our clients, their workforce has shifted to working from anywhere. It used to be home, but really now it's anywhere. So how do we work with that, Eric?
Yeah, it seemed like overnight the world completely changed in early 2020, and with those changes come a number of vulnerabilities and a number of new things that we need to think about. And I've got some stats on here, and I don't want to scare anybody with stats, but there's some real numbers that we need to think about when it comes to the explosion of software as a service solutions that businesses are using. So we're talking about the Microsoft 365s, the Google Workplace, the items that we're using on a daily basis, Microsoft Teams, everything went virtual. Even this platform we're doing right now with this webinar, everything has exploded in growth. And it's to the tune of $113 billion is being spent this year alone just on these solutions that are out there. And with these comes very real disruption and vulnerability. You can see here by the stats in 2022, so next year, 70% of organizations will suffer a business disruption due to a loss in data in their SaaS application alone. That's a real number we need to prepare for to make sure that all data is being protected, no matter where that data lives.
Eric, can you tell our viewers a little bit more about SaaS? I know it's a term that we're really familiar with in the technology industry, but our users may actually be using this type of service and may need to understand a little bit more about it and how Datto interacts with the SaaS offerings.
Good question.
Sure. Absolutely. So think of SaaS applications as your email, and you're going out to a different site for where that data lives, and all data is vulnerable. So you need to protect that data much in the same manner that you're using. So think of everything that's in your email, your SharePoint online, your files that may be stored within OneDrive, or if you're using OneNote to take all of your notes and store things that way. All of those open up just more areas of vulnerabilities that we need to protect our networks from. And the thought of just saying, okay, well, that data is living out there on somebody else's servers, and Microsoft has that, or Google has that, or Amazon has that, so it's safe. And that's a thought that the bad guys are actually preying on. They want you to think that data is completely impenetrable from vulnerability, and the fact is it just isn't. There's a ton of stories out there of data loss due to that.
That's a great point. We have had this conversation with clients that have had their systems hacked because they volunteered a password or something of that nature. And they thought, oh, we'll just get it back. And lo and behold, it wasn't where they could recover just one item. It was a full type of recovery, and they would lose stuff as part of the recovery. So with, having that type of, we talk about SaaS or this hosted type of data disruption, you could have an increased average length of downtime, and data recovery can take an average of 18 and a half hours to restore things back to some type of normal. I guess where you could probably put it, right, Eric?
Yeah, that's exactly it, and that's the highest cost of the downtime. It's not. We'll get to ransomware, but it's not so much the actual event. It's the cost of being down. And when you're talking about a network being down for 18 hours, more than that, depending on the size of the network, there's some serious monetary considerations you need to think about, and then start building that into your network and how to make sure you're limiting that amount of downtime that you can restore in much faster than 18 hours.
That's a great model. And the 18 and a half was really surprising because, with some of our clients, they work on billable time, and you multiply that times, how many billers that you have that are now not productive, that number adds up really fast.
Indeed. And we also know, and I alluded to this just before, ransomware. Ransomware is king, and this type of event is costing billions of going down. So when you look at all of that, it's not so much just the cost of ransomware, but it's also the downtime that organizations experience. Joseph, you had mentioned, thinking about the billable hours. What we look at Datto is exactly that. All the costs of downtime that you associate that. If you cannot bill out, if your staff is unproductive, that all ties into that true cost of that ransomware attack.
Yeah. That's usually it's a hidden thing that creeps up on you. You don't think about until you're in the thick of it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now let's look at some of the numbers and how prevalent ransomware has really become.
Yeah, and I mentioned it's king, and ransomware is attacking every single aspect of where your data is out there. And I have some stats on this slide, and I'm not going to go through all these one by one, but the one all the way at the bottom, I just want people to understand how prevalent it really is. We're talking every 13 seconds a business is hit with ransomware. And the key to that is just knowing these bad guys, they don't care who you are and what you do. All they care about is that your data is important to you, and they're going to try to capture that data.
That's interesting, because a lot of the meetings that we'll have or stories that we'll hear is, oh, I'm too small, they're not going to worry about me, or I don't have anything they're interested in, so why would I have to worry about a ransomware attack? That's only the big businesses. but this doesn't sound like that at all.
No, we're seeing it everything from a two-person organization to a 2,000 enterprise-sized company. To the bad guys, it doesn't matter who you are or even what your data is. It's that your data is important to you. That's all that they care about, and they're going to attempt to exploit that and do it for financial gain.
Wow.
So it's interesting we talk about this because we've heard about ransomware for a long time, but sometimes I think it gets thrown into that technology bubble that people just say, well, it's ransomware, but not really understanding what that means and the scope of what ransomware, how far reaching it is, like you talked about, the money and the time that's behind it. And you had mentioned that we kind of have to start looking at the internet itself and analyze its anatomy and how that works and how that affects ransomware and you and I.
Exactly. The first step into learning and to fully understanding all this is to start with ground zero and understand the anatomy of the internet and what it looks like today.
I mean, this is shocking when you just take a moment to truly look at this graphic, because you're saying, Eric, that the majority of us just hang out in that top tier, and that is estimated at 4% of the entire World Wide Web.
This really blew my mind.
Yeah, when you think about the internet and all of us without truly comprehending it, where we live in our day-to-day aspects, your news sites, your social media sites, your shopping sites, that is the surface web. That's only 4% of the web. The deep web below that is your databases, your healthcare records, academic records, financial records, whatever you have to log into in order to access that's not public facing. But the scariest part is the layer below that, the dark web. That's where the bad guys live. That's where ransomware starts and originates, and people share malicious code and share the data that they steal. When you add up the deep web and the dark web, that's 96%. And that's what we need to think about when we start talking about some of the evolution of the threats that are out there.
Wow.
And there's quite a number of these. And I like how you talked about the evolution of this, because a lot of times you think, oh, I have things to be able to prevent cyber threats, but our thinking of what is a cyber threat, I think the word you use here, evolution, is very, very current and how it's affecting us today. So what do you find? What's going on?
Who are these threat groups that you speak of? I'd like to better understand.
Sure. It starts with the ransomware developers. Those are the ones that they're making these ill-gotten gains, and they're very good at what they're doing. And they're sharing all of this out there in that dark web, and there's no shortage of them. You don't even have to be a full-blown computer developer, a code writer, to go out there and purchase and use ransomware. It is out there for the masses to use. Another threat that we need to be very aware of, especially in this past year, insider threats. Internal employees or ex-employees that may have an axe to grind, that when companies started tightening their belts in Q1 of last year and the unfortunate incidents where people were losing their jobs, what we did see is insider threats that were selling their access to the networks and going on the dark web saying, who's the highest bidder? Can I sell this to you? There's also the organized crime threat group. And what I share with people is the threats that are out there, they aren't just the lone wolf sitting in a basement somewhere that's attacking. These are full-blown organized crime syndicates that are thinking of ways to disperse their bad code easier, faster, and make it easier for the victims to actually pay them in the ransomware, in the Bitcoin ask. Another threat that we're seeing more and more of, even recently, as of last week, I saw another instance of this, nation states that are purposely attacking businesses to steal that proprietary information, coming after US-based companies saying, I want to steal your data and steal your information so that they can copy it, sell it, and do what they will with it. And then the last one are the Internet of Things, the things that we need to really think about when it comes to a network and all of the devices that are now connecting, especially since everybody is working from home. Nobody is really in the office anymore. And when you think about your home environments, I just think of my own. I've got my camera system, the locks on my doors. I've got my thermostat. I've got my alarm system on the house. I've got all these different devices that are built to make my life easier, but they also introduce vulnerabilities to those workers, especially working from anywhere, working from home right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're included in all of this are conveniences like Nest and Alexa, and these are the kinds of entry points you're speaking of.
Yeah, it could be a refrigerator, your washer
Yeah.
and dryer. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can
Everything.
be
Yeah.
thrown in with that.
That's
And
great.
you think of like, we're in this industry. I'm super into technology where everything runs my house. I can say what I want and it just happens in my house. And yet I'm sitting here working and doing events and doing things where I need to take that into consideration and make sure that my own home is as locked down as possible.
Right. Who really is listening to this conversation right now?
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, so we've discussed the threats, the threat groups. So the big question is, what can we do about it? And that's a question that Terrapin as a company, we ourselves have thought seriously about and have really spent a lot of time on thinking about security and business continuity. And with the help of Datto, we've been able to really secure things and provide backups for these, which is one of the reasons because they can do it securely and with a reasonably good, return on the investment. It makes it really easy to put something in place, to have something that very easily will protect your assets in that way. Now, Eric, what does it mean, and why do businesses need more than just a backup solution? We talk about this continuity thing. Is that just like, backing up my files to a hard drive, or, hey, back in the day, it was a tape, how does that different in what we're talking about here?
The biggest difference between what Terrapin provides, business continuity versus a simple backup solution, business continuity is all about limiting the amount of downtime. And there's a number of ways we provide that. And I'm a pictures guy, so the easiest way I can describe what business continuity is are through the next two slides here. First, it's about reliable data redundancy, keeping multiple copies of your data at all times. On the left-hand side of this picture, that's your computer environment. Whether you're working from home, whether you're working inside of an office, that data is living somewhere, living on your servers, living on your laptops, living in your virtual infrastructure. And what reliable data redundancy is saying is through Terrapin and through Datto, you have a continuity device that lives on site and stores the data from that VM environment, from the physical environment, and keeps a copy of it. But it's also sending it to two different data centers. So keeping it in multiple offsite locations, as well as another copy within your premises, and then the original copy living on your devices. So the first step in having a proper business continuity solution is having reliable data redundancy. Then you talk about, okay, how do we limit downtime? We limit downtime through virtualization. What that means is if you go down, if you get a ransomware attack, if you're working from home and your SaaS applications have some sort of vulnerability, we need to be able to get that data back at a moment's notice. So I'll walk you through exactly what that means from a standpoint of the data that's living on your network or on your device. You're working, and in this scenario, you accidentally click on a link and you get ransomware. What instant virtualization is we go to that Datto appliance, that Datto solution through Terrapin, and we spin up an exact same image. We virtualize that device in a matter of seconds, and we bring that network back online. We bring that device back online, no matter where you're working from. The benefits of this, obviously, it reduces downtime. That's our number one goal with business continuity. How can I limit the amount of downtime we have? It helps with here's an industry buzzword warning, RTO and RPO. RPO, what that stands for is recovery time objective and recovery point objective. That's basically how much does downtime cost your business. And we can walk you through how to calculate that and estimate that as well. And then we can do this either from our on-site appliance or from our data center. So that is a true business continuity solution.
Awesome. That sounds great. And we have so many clients with Datto appliances, but now with Microsoft 365 subscriptions becoming the norm, we don't have an Exchange server in those scenarios. And lots of these smaller firms we're working with have chosen to forego a server altogether and use OneDrive or SharePoint. So can you tell us a little bit more about how Datto protects the data that is living inside of SaaS applications and on the web?
Absolutely. That's where Datto's SaaS protection solutions come into play. And specifically for, as you mentioned, having that hosted mailbox somewhere else, Microsoft 365 or the G Suite, and all of the shared drives within that, Microsoft Teams and SharePoint, and where this data lives, it's the exact same process that we're talking about, where we're taking a copy of that data and saving it elsewhere, saving it in our data center, so that even if something goes wrong with your actual Microsoft data, Terrapin can go into their own copy of the data and just restore right from there. That is the key that to protecting all of this right now, is looking at the explosion in growth and all of the companies that are now moving everything to the cloud. It is now about protecting that cloud as well. Even Microsoft and Google in the license agreements, they actually recommend you should be backing this up. It's in the fine print in the license agreements. And this is what we need to look at when you're talking about protecting all of that data and making sure it's always available if and when something bad goes wrong.
And I just want to jump in and say something bad can be as simple as you deleted all your contacts on accident. I have actually used the Datto SaaS system, and I was just honestly blown away at how easy it was to restore specific information for a specific user. It didn't interrupt them. Say if it's an Outlook issue and I had to restore contacts, they don't even need to close out of the program while I do it. I mean, people can really keep working and get their data back in an incredibly short period of time.
They can. I recently did this for a client. And as a matter of fact, it's just like what you had mentioned, Betty. All of a sudden they noticed that they had a whole swath of their contacts missing. And what had happened is they had shared their contacts folder with multiple people. And one of the people they had shared it with had it on their phone. And they saw these extra contacts. And they're like, well, I don't need these, and started deleting them. And now all of a sudden they're missing like 150 contacts that they needed for their business. We were able to recover them, put them right back in, because they had that protection. And it was just amazing on how well that worked.
Yeah.
And protect them from themselves really is what happened in that situation.
Yeah. I mean, users make mistakes. We all do.
Yeah. So that's what, at Terrapin, we always want to protect the data of our clients. We want to keep them safe, keep their data safe, their systems safe. And understanding how cybersecurity works it's a moving target, and it covers many different aspects, and it can seem like a huge undertaking, and it is. So the big question here, Eric, is how do we begin? What can we do to ensure that as a client, how do I ensure that things are safe as a MSP? How do we ensure that the client's data is safe?
That's exactly it. That it's such a big scope to think of that a lot of us are thinking it's a huge daunting task. And the fact is, a lot of us are already well on our way to staying protected. And there are a couple of things that we're already doing.
So what type of things? Where can we begin to look at that?
I mean, the number one thing that I was thinking of is that our clients, again, because they might be a smaller firm or a medium-sized firm, they don't think they're going to be vulnerable. It's sort of like you read the news about these attacks and think that's going to happen to the big firm and not to me. So to me, the first step is acknowledging that you are the target.
That's exactly it. I mentioned it before. The bad guys don't care who you are or what you do. It's all of us are a target. And once we realize that, that's when we can start working in our policies and procedures to make sure that we are protected. So number one, just know, yes, that you are not immune to these attacks. Number two is make sure you've got policies and procedures in place and people are following these policies and having that security layer at the forefront.
Interesting. So that basically means that, cybersecurity is not something you can just buy, but it's not something you could purchase. It's really ongoing, is what you're saying.
Yeah, the gone are the days of just being able to purchase technology and it just does everything for you. Now it's in a sense where you have to keep going. It's the ongoing employee training. It's the ongoing testing and configuration of that, and just making sure that we're always on top of those latest threats that are out there and the issues that are happening. And even with putting together a solid password management solution in place and having that, those are Terrapin. You guys can absolutely help with developing that password policy and password management that you do offer your customers.
Yeah, I think that's even more important nowadays. It used to be where, I could take my passwords and I'll keep them in my locked office. I have a locked drawer where I keep all the confidential things. But, you talked about earlier about how you have people that are threats from the inside. What if you had someone that left your organization, but now knows where you keep all that stuff, and they were to organize something that breaks into that location, and they get access to that key or to that drawer, and then obviously all your passwords. So, there's things to think about that maybe we have not had to think about in the past that may have worked well. They were secured, but the situations requires thinking outside the box in those cases, right, Betty?
Absolutely. And, don't leave your devices unattended. I think Eric has a, story about this at the airport.
Yeah, absolutely. And this comes into play too with at-home users and even traveling. I'm normally on the road traveling with the exception of the past year, but there's so many times a complete stranger at an airport asks me to keep an eye on their stuff while they use the restroom, or at-home users that may have children at home and other family members that are utilizing that same hardware that you're using for work. These are vulnerabilities that the bad guys are absolutely preying on because they know that these types of things are out there. So it is a matter of never leaving your devices unattended, and also making sure you get awfully careful of what you click on. If it seems too good to be true, it absolutely is.
We teach that all the time. That's where we keep saying it's something it's ongoing. Users have to be paying attention. And I have to say, our clients are amazing at that. They notify us when something odd comes in and let us weigh in on it. And they're really paying close attention to that. And I applaud them for that.
It's a beautiful thing when we get those little emails.
It is. And you know what, Terrapin, we offer the best-in-class AV and malware protection tools because we do see this as your front line of defense. But Eric's going to tell you what else we can be doing.
Absolutely. Backups, business continuity on all aspects of your data. That is a must-have. This is no longer a nice-to-have. It is start thinking true business continuity. And if I go down, how quick can I be up and running? And then the next step is the mobile device policy and thinking about what people are using in their home environments, iPads, tablets, their phones for work activities, and then introducing those vulnerabilities back into the office. And then the last thing too is just constant testing. That's where we tie back in it's not just something, it's not a one-time purchase. This is something that through Terrapin, you can constantly test what solutions are in there, what solutions are keeping you secure, but are they up to the best of the configuration that it needs to be? Are we testing the employees to make sure that everybody is aware of the vulnerabilities that are out there?
Well said.
And that's so true, especially with so many of our clients being in the legal industry. Their data is their clients' data. So I truly believe we're headed in the right direction for our clients to be protected.
Absolutely. And just to reiterate, we've scared you with stats. We've talked about the vulnerabilities that are out there. And the point is just getting in that right direction. All of us are already on our way there. You're there if you're joining this broadcast here today, and taking that next step and reaching out to the fine folks at Terrapin to make sure that you are protected, that you do have the proper solutions that are in place.
Thank you, Eric. Well, that really is kind of our call to action, to make sure that we're following up on those things, as most of you already are. The biggest thing we started off with is just acknowledging that something needs to be said and done and tested, and the training that goes along with that. So if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to us at info@terrapintechnology.com. We would love the opportunity to explain these things in more detail, offer you suggestions, provide training or testing in those regards, in any way that we can help you to continue your business, keep it operational without any interruption whatsoever. Eric, thank you so much for sharing those stats with us and your wealth of knowledge on this subject. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, Eric really lives on the front line, and it's so nice to know that we have such a close relationship with Datto that we can rely on them to make sure that we're offering our clients the absolute best in class solutions to keep them protected as the landscape is ever changing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for attending today, and we look forward to you joining us for our next installment of our Webinar Wednesday, where we'll be talking about how courts are working and how it affects you and your practice. We look forward to that discussion. Until then, thank you very much and have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Eric.